Now, if I asked you the question, who do you think was the greatest human being who ever lived? Don't answer the church answer because there is a correct answer. But, this is what I'm going to talk about today. But who might you think? Name a great person that you think would be maybe a great human being. Abraham, from the Bible, right? Abraham, good answer. Who else? David, good answer. Man after God's own heart. What? John. I said don't answer this church answer. Why would you? That's the one. Yeah, that's the pastor's kid for you. What else? Another great person. Paul? Paul's a great man. Paul is greater than John the Baptist. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Who? Daniel. Man, that guy was super great. Super great. Who else? Just human beings. Don't go outside the Bible. Enoch. Yep, in the Bible. Yep. Abraham Lincoln. Great man, right? I thought so. Who else? Gandhi. Humanitarian, right? Gandhi. Mother Teresa. Princess Diana. I just think of them together because they both died the same day. Who? The least, Connie. Okay. Connie is the greatest. Who else? Well, you get the idea, right? I mean, there's some idea. If Time Magazine was to put out a cover of the greatest human being ever, who do you suppose would be on that cover? They might bow to a little bit of pressure and put Jesus on there. They might. Or if they were not really thinking like that, they might think, Napoleon. They might think George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, whoever they might put on there. And we don't have too many statesmen alive today that I wonder if we would put on. But what makes great? What makes a person great? What is greatness? I was thinking about that, and I remember in Star Wars when Luke Skywalker is looking for the great warrior Yoda. What does Yoda say? Right? He goes, wars not make one great. Right? Yeah, wars don't make you great necessarily. What does make you great? Well, go to Matthew chapter 11, verses 7 through 15. Matthew chapter 11, 7 through 15. The greatest human being that had been born up until that point asked Jesus a question. And he asked him a question because things weren't going so well for him. Let me actually start in verse 1 so you get the idea of the full section here. But in Matthew chapter 11, verse 1, Jesus has just been talking about the meaning of discipleship and what it takes to serve him and how you'll be rewarded. And if you receive him, you'll accept him. He who receives a prophet in the name of a prophet shall receive a prophet's reward, etc., etc. So now we get to Matthew chapter 11, verse 1. When Jesus had finished giving instructions to his 12 disciples, he departed from there to teach and preach in their cities. Now when John, while imprisoned, heard of the works of Christ, he sent word by his disciples. And he said to him, "Are you the expected one, or shall we look for someone else?" Jesus answered and said to them, "Go and report to John what you hear and see." Right? The blind receive sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear. The dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. And blessed is he who does not take offense at me. Okay, so in that first section there, verses 1 through 6, John's in prison. Why is he in prison? Because he insulted the monarch. He insulted Herod, the tetrarch. I shouldn't even call him a monarch. He just kind of pretended he was a king. And this guy liked his brother's wife, really liked his brother's wife. In fact, so much so that he convinced her to come and be with him. Took his brother's wife, married her. John the Baptist wanted to make sure that that man realized what he had done was wrong. Because he thought he was living, just fine in God's sight. And he says, no, it's unlawful for you to have her. You shouldn't take your brother's wife. Right? He had a bigger army, more power, more money. And he just took his brother's wife. And so Herod and the wife, Herod's wife, didn't particularly like that. And so they arranged to have John locked up. You could be locked up for saying something like that. So John's in prison. Now this is a man, keep in mind, he's used to living outdoors, right? He's used to living in the wild, and he eats whatever he can find of like honey or grasshoppers. And now he's locked up, and he's beginning to wonder, I thought that guy I pointed to, my little cousin there, Jesus, I thought he was the one. What are we doing? Why am I in jail? I thought we were going to start to take over. I thought we were going to throw off Rome and get rid of foreign rule here, right? Because Israel didn't like foreign rulers either. We don't in America, and they didn't, certainly. And so what's going on? This doesn't make sense. I thought you were, so he doubts. He has a little question, and he sends his disciples, and he says, tell us, are you the one that we've been waiting for? Or should we expect someone else? And that's a polite way of saying, hurry up, right? Like, what's the holdup? What are we waiting for? I mean, we were waiting. You're the one, right? I mean, and John's message was from the beginning that Jesus is the one. So Jesus sends back and he says, go tell him what you guys, you disciples of John, have heard and seen. Speaking of hearing and seeing, you've seen blind people get their sight, and you've heard deaf people get their hearing, right? And the lame and the poor and all these things, which is to fulfill Old Testament prophecy. So then John's faith is renewed. Jesus reassures him. And then verse 7, this is our section, verses 7 through 15. As these men were going away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds about John. What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind? This is kind of funny. Just maybe you don't catch this humor, but it's kind of funny. What'd you go out in the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind? But what did you go out to see? A man dressed in soft clothing? Those who wear soft clothing are in king's palaces. You didn't go out in the desert to see that. But what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes. I tell you, and one who is more than a prophet. He's talking about John here. This is the one about whom it was written, behold, I send my messenger ahead of you who will prepare your way before you. Truly I say to you, among those born of women there has not arisen anyone greater than John the Baptist. And yet the one who is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. Connie, right? According to what she just said. From the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and violent men take it by force. For all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. And if you are willing to accept it, John himself is Elijah who was to come. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. May God add his blessing to the reading of his word. So this section, that's what this is about. This is about John the Baptist and his ministry. Now, most of us, okay, look up here. Most of us, when we see like Bible movies, Jesus, John the Baptist, they can't afford very many extras, right? And so there's like 30 people or 50 people like, yay, Jesus. And it's like a small group in a giant area, and it just kind of looks a little pathetic. Like, well, a few people knew and heard, and no. It was not like 10 people or 50 people. And when it says like 12, he started sharing this with his 12 disciples. They were the ones closest to him. There were thousands upon thousands of people gathered around to hear John the Baptist preach, gathered around later to hear Jesus preach, Jesus from Nazareth preach. It was thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people just swarming, elbowing each other, stepping on each other, it says at some places. Just crazy how many people were out there listening. So now we look at this, and Jesus has something to say about this John. And it's not like he's not necessarily trying to defend himself. He's trying to defend John, who has a doubt and a question here. By the way, as an aside, it's not really one of the points of the sermon that I'm going to bring up, but as an aside, sometimes even very faithful people have doubts. Sometimes even very godly, faithful people have doubts about salvation or about Jesus or God or the Bible. And if you have a doubt, it doesn't mean you're not saved, okay? Everybody has doubts. But that doesn't mean that, oh, I'm not saved, I'm going to hell. No, it's just a doubt. Now, we shouldn't have them, and we should seek the answers to find those things, so that we don't have doubts. But John here has a doubt. Are you the one? I thought you were the one. And God himself told John in the Spirit that Jesus was the one, right? But he still asks the question. And that's okay. Sometimes you can have doubts and ask the question of God. Is this real? Are you real? Right? Or should I be looking in a different direction? And it's okay. Now, if you listen to those doubts and those doubts turn into disbelief, that's bad. That's a problem, right? But to have a doubt, that's normal. Let's just say that. It's not good, but everybody has it, okay? But to turn it into disbelief, that's bad. Clear? Does that make sense? Okay. So John the Baptist here, Jesus calls him, what verse is this? Oh, verse 11. He says, "Truly I say to you, among those born of women," which includes who? Everyone, up to that point, right? "Among those born of women, there has not arisen anyone greater than John the Baptist." He's the greatest human being who ever lived at that point. John the Baptist. Now that's really saying something, right? Because who did we have before John the Baptist? Abraham, Moses, Elijah, Elisha, Aaron. John's greater than them. David, a man after God's own heart. John is greater than King David. Solomon, John is greater than Solomon. Right? Who all did we have? All the prophets, everybody. John is greater. How do we know? What made him so great? What made him so good? I have 4 things right here that really show that John had true greatness. Because think about it. He's basically, now just in case you don't know, John had a certain kind of vow put on him from before he was born. Does anybody know the name of that vow? It starts with an N. Yeah, Nazirite vow. And that vow was a very specific type of vow. Certain people throughout Scripture have had that vow. One of them was Samson. You remember Samson and Delilah? Right? Hey there, Delilah. So Samson and Delilah, Samson had the rules, and he was a super strong guy. And his rules were like, don't cut your hair, don't drink wine or even any grape product, don't even eat raisins, right? And don't touch dead people. Don't touch dead things, dead people, right? Don't do any of those things. So Samson, you remember, he was super strong. He lifted up gates. He slew like thousands with the jawbone of a donkey. And he just, did these amazing feats of strength that God gave him, this superhuman ability. He wasn't very good with his choice of women. And he married Delilah. And she, the Philistines threatened to burn her and her family and kill them. And they said, but if you tell us how to defeat Samson, right, what's going to happen? We'll let you live. So she gets Samson, and she's like, tell me, you don't really love me if you wouldn't tell me. He doesn't tell her. And then he lies. He makes up some stuff, some silly things. Yeah, my strength is in my hair. If you braid it in this thing, then I'll become weak. He was kind of dancing around the true answer. Eventually he reveals, right, if you shave my head, I'll be weak, because she doesn't let up. And he finally gives in. And they shave his head in the middle of the night. And he is weak, and they beat him up, and they pluck his eyes out, and they make him go, to the Colosseum or whatever it was that the Philistines had. So that's a Nazirite vow. John the Baptist also had one. So imagine, that means no razor, no blade, no scissors can touch your head or your face your entire life. So he would have looked pretty rough. He never had his hair cut. Never had a haircut. Never trimmed his beard. He lived outdoors in the wilderness, right? It says also that he wore a garment of camel's hair. Now, what do you guys wear? Anybody got camel's hair on today? No? Nobody wearing a leather belt? Actually, I do have a leather belt on. But a leather belt and camel hair, and that's like itchy, scratchy, uncomfortable. That's what prophets wore. Elijah wore the same clothes. And so it's basically a homeless guy. He literally is homeless, and he looks homeless, and he has this, I imagine dreadlocks must have set in at some point, right? And he tells everybody, God sent me to give you a message. I'm a prophet from God. And here's the thing. Everybody believed him. A homeless man in the desert says, God told me to tell you something. And everyone went, okay. What were the miracles John had? He didn't do any miracles. He didn't do any. As a matter of fact, it says that in the Bible. At first I thought, well, I don't think he did any. And then there's a passage in the book of John that says he came without bringing a sign. He didn't have any signs. And you believed him. I mean, everybody believed that John was a prophet. Everybody. So much so that when they were trying to, after they had executed John, Herod executed John, by the way. After they were doing that, and they were trying to trap Jesus because they wanted to kill him too, right? And they said, tell us, Jesus, and they asked him a hard question. And he says, okay, I'll tell you, but first you got to answer me this question. Where did John's baptism come from? Was it from man or was it from God? And they said, well, we can't. They said, hang on, let's think about that. So they went and they talked to themselves, and they said, if we say it's from God, he'll just tell us, then why didn't you believe him, right? But if we say it's from man, like he's not from God, the people will kill us. They will stone us to death because everybody believed that John was from God. Everybody believed that he was a true prophet with a message from God. I mean, everybody, like the whole nation, he is an official prophet. Nobody doubted it. It's crazy. It's amazing. And it's just this homeless-looking guy eating bugs and honey in the middle of the woods, right? It just makes no sense. How did he do this? Well, he must have been great. He had great charisma. And the pathway to greatness has got four points real quick that John followed. And I just want to share them this morning. The pathway to greatness, number one, is not distracted by fear. The pathway to greatness is not distracted by fear. See this in verse 7. As these men, the disciples of John, we know that there were two of them there from another gospel. As these men were going away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds about John. What did you go out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind. John didn't care. John was not afraid. He was not afraid. He was not afraid to tell Herod to his face that his marriage was wrong. His marriage to his brother's wife was illegal and immoral. And he wasn't afraid. He wasn't shaken by the wind. By the way, that phrase, a reed shaken by the wind, in one sense it means not a flip-flopper, right? Because like when the wind blows and there's these reeds, we have cattails around here, right? And the wind blows this way and all the cattails go this way. And then the wind shifts and the wind blows this way and all the cattails go this way, right? Kind of with public opinion. And when Facebook says that it's bad to say this, then everybody goes, okay, it's bad to say that. And then when Facebook goes, no, this is bad to say this, then we all go this way, right? That's kind of the idea of a reed shaken in the wind. But also, there's a thinly veiled clue. Herod's insignia was a reed. Herod's insignia was a reed, if you didn't know that. That's interesting. It's on his coin or some official thing like that. So he's kind of like, wait a minute, a reed shaken by the wind. Who are we talking about here? And then when he says the next thing, did you go to see someone in soft clothes? Those people live in palaces. Now we go, oh, he is talking about Herod, the guy that has John imprisoned, right? He's taking a swipe at John, or at Herod, excuse me. So John was not distracted by fear. I wonder about us, how many times we're distracted and we don't want to say the truth of God or God's word because we're afraid. We're afraid of the backlash. We're afraid that we're going to get canceled. Now, most of us are too small in terms of our influence to really care about being canceled, and yet we still do, right? We don't have 1,000, 10,000 people following us or 1 million people or anything like that. I actually do have 1,000 friends on Facebook. I never thought of that. But this guy was not distracted by fear, right? He's not going to back down, especially even when they throw him in jail, in prison, and then later kill him, right? So that's the pathway to greatness. You can't be afraid to compromise your meaning or your message. You have a message from God yourselves, and that is the message of Christ and the gospel, right? Right? I mean, that's our message. That's our message. And we can't be distracted by fear. The second point here that I want to make is the pathway to greatness is not addicted to comfort. Is not addicted to comfort. Wow, this one. I condemn myself. Comfort, right? Jesus asked the question, but what did you go out to see? A man dressed in soft clothing? Right? Those who wear soft clothing are in kings' palaces. He's clearly talking about Herod. Did you go out in the wilderness for John's baptism? Did you go out to see King Herod? Did you go out to see this guy dressed up in soft clothes? See, John was not swayed by comfort. He's not going to compromise by comfort. In fact, he wore an itchy camel's garment made out of camel fur. It's not really fur, it's more like hair. It's itchy, it's scratchy, it's hot, it's uncomfortable. And how many of you have ever spent a lot of time outside? You guys, yeah? Is it more or less comfortable than inside? Less comfortable. I mean, I like being outside better than I like being inside, but it's just not as comfortable. Like if I go home, I sit on my couch, I put my feet up, I turn on the TV, that's pretty comfortable, right? If I go out in the woods and I'm walking around, it's like, now I got to sit down. Oh, that's wet. Where can I sit, right? Oh, that's pokey. Oh, that's bugs. Usually we bring gear with us. We could sit on that, right? But John lived out there, and he ate wild locusts, or he ate locusts and wild honey, right? So not even the good, like we have the nice fat honeybees in America, right? I imagine his were a little feisty, and maybe didn't taste as good, the honey from them. It's not like we have today. And so just try to live 24 hours in the woods and see how you feel. And we have a super wet, comfortable area too. You know, you can get lots to drink. This is the desert. So he wasn't addicted to comfort. He could teach himself not to be caught up in that. So his message was on point. He was not distracted by fear, and he was not addicted to comfort. How many times are we addicted to comfort? We're so comfortable. We're so comfortable in this country that to serve Jesus Christ, our longing for comfort will distract us and prevent us from serving Jesus Christ. Oh, a missions trip? That sounds uncomfortable. And they are uncomfortable. I've been in some hot places that are pretty rough, and I don't do it very often as much as I should. Oh, I got to tell someone about Jesus? That might be uncomfortable for them or me or both. You know what? I don't want to get up and go to church and fellowship with other believers and learn more about God because my bed is so comfortable. That snooze button is not your friend, right? It's not your friend. It doesn't help you. It doesn't do you any favors. That's just being addicted to comfort, right? And trust me, I fall for it too. How many times could I be doing something different and better and more helpful? And yet, that couch sounds so good with a nice TV show and a big glass of something, right? Oh, comfort, comfort, comfort. We get so addicted to comfort. As a matter of fact, we don't even want to succeed. We just don't want to fail. Jordan Peterson is a Canadian professor, and he was talking about, I don't have time to get into all this, but he was talking about that human beings have a fundamental fear of failure, even more so than a desire to succeed. Does that make sense? So we just don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to suffer. We don't want to go through any of this discomfort. We just don't want to stand out. And so we would rather avoid pain than seek glory or seek achievement. And most of us live that way, and that's not a good thing. That's not a good. To serve Christ effectively, to get his message out to the world, we have to forsake our own comfort. Deny yourself. Take up your cross and follow him. And so you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to do things that make you uncomfortable to follow Jesus Christ, to tell people about him. That's your job, by the way, if you have accepted Christ. You're a slave of Jesus Christ. I'm a slave of Jesus Christ, and he says, hey, get up and go tell people about me. And we think, I'm so tired. We're tired because we overeat and under-exercise and underwork. It's not a good thing. So, yeah, that's right. Number 3, the third path to greatness. The pathway to greatness has a clear message. It has a clear message. And John's message was very clear. What did you go out to see? A prophet? He says, yes, I tell you, and one who is more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it is written, behold, I send my messenger ahead of you who will prepare your way before you. That clear message is that Jesus is the Messiah. Jesus is the expected one. He is the Son of God. And that clear message, John had that, and he didn't get distracted. He didn't get sidetracked by fear or addicted to comfort, but he stayed on point, on message. So many of us get distracted and fear, and we get addicted to our comfort and our fun little ways, and we forget that we have a message. You have to tell people about Jesus. If you believe in Jesus, you have to do it. But I don't like to, and other people are better at it. Well, Jesus told them to tell too, but that doesn't mean you are off the hook. You have to tell people about Jesus. That goes along with being saved. It's not that it's a requirement of salvation, but you ought to do it. And not just, well, it's a good idea. God told you. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations. It has a clear message, and that's John's clear message. The last one, number 4, the pathway to greatness is willing to pay the ultimate price. When you consider this, from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and violent men take it by force. Now, this verse is very difficult to understand. I can't even be 100% certain on this. This is just my best guess after I've studied this. But I think what Jesus is saying basically is there's persecution against the kingdom of God. There's violence, right? There's violence. The kingdom of heaven suffers violence because John's in prison right now. Later, he will be beheaded. Jesus has people trying to kill him at this point, and they will succeed at a later date. He will go to the cross. So John and Jesus are both murdered by people that hate God, violently murdered. John has his head cut off while he's in jail. Jesus gets nailed to a cross. The kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and violent men, right? Violent men take it by force. They try to force their way. But John didn't compromise. Jesus did not compromise. They paid the ultimate price. How many of us would pay the ultimate price to prove that our message is true? I would challenge you today to tell people about Jesus Christ. If you have accepted Christ as your Lord and Savior, I would challenge you to tell someone else about it. Start with one person. Break the ice. Start with one person. Tell them about Jesus. It's your job too. It's not just me. Don't leave it to me. It won't get done. I probably lead maybe 5 or 6 people to the Lord a year. That is not enough. That is not enough. If you wait for me to do it, it's not going to go well. I need everybody. We need everybody involved. You don't get a pass. If you believe in Jesus, you need to tell. You need to tell other people about it. You say, but I don't know how. I'm not very good at it. I've tried, and nobody listens. Well, you're in good company. There's lots of prophets that spoke, and nobody listened to them either. But you're a prophet. And actually, it says John was the greatest ever, right? But there is the one who is the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than John. Well, that's us. Because whoever the least in the kingdom of heaven is, we don't know who it is. Connie says it's her. I don't know about that. But that least person, the one all the way at the bottom, right? The one way down here, the least, the tiniest member of the kingdom of heaven. John's not in the kingdom of heaven, right? Because he dies before Jesus is crucified and rises from the dead. John is part of the Old Testament. John is one of the Old Testament saints, okay? That's just my interpretation of it, and most orthodoxy agrees. But the least in the kingdom of heaven is all the way down here. So that means every single person in the kingdom of heaven is automatically greater than John the Baptist. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? So Connie, you are greater than John the Baptist. Jordan, you're greater than John the Baptist. Wow. That's amazing when you consider it. Why are we greater? Because we have the full revelation, right, of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we have that message to tell other people, and it's so important. So, how do you get better at telling people about Jesus Christ? 3 ways. Very simple. If you want to get better at this, if you want to be better at witnessing and telling people about Christ, I got 3 tips for you. You ready? Are you ready? Yeah? Okay, good. First tip, pray more. Pray more. If you have unsaved friends or family, you need to pray for them, that they'll get saved. Pray for them every day. I have certain people, 3 right now, I pray for every single day that they'll be saved. Sometimes the Holy Spirit will just put a name in my head, and I will pray for that person to get saved. The other day, this made no sense to me, but I prayed for, and this is going to sound silly, but I thought I would do it, and I did. Janet Jackson. I don't know why. I just thought I should pray for Janet Jackson to get saved. And I'm like, I don't even know if she is or not. And then I saw a thing that her religion came up, and it wasn't Christian. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I prayed for her to get saved a few times. That's a good idea. We need to pray for people to get saved. right? We need to pray more. Pray every day. Talk to the Lord. Spend time with him. Second thing you need to do is sin less. Sin less. Not be sinless, but sin less than you are right now. Find the sins that are besetting you, that are controlling you, that are tying you down, and find a way to defeat those sins. Find a way to quit. You say, that's impossible. I can't quit sinning. Well, you can do it a lot less than you are, right? The Bible says we all have sin, but we can go without sin. So we have to do that. The third way that will help us bring more people to Christ is to love more. Love more. Love wins, right? And I know some people have taken that message and twisted it and warped it to say, well, therefore we should allow sin and accept it and tolerate it and brotherly love and everything's great. But if you truly love someone, aren't you going to warn them when they're doing something foolish? Like if I loved you and I saw that you were running right into traffic and there's a semi coming, and I love you, right? I love you. But I don't want to hurt your feelings or yell because it might make you scared or angry. So I don't say anything because I don't want to be rude, and you run right into the street and get smacked by a truck. Is that very loving? Well, I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I didn't want you to think I was mad at you. So, right? That doesn't make any sense. Of course you would say, stop! Right? Wait! Come here, look out! And when we're giving the gospel to people, that's what we're doing. Right? Look out! Pay attention. We're warning them. Love more. And it's loving to tell people about Jesus. It's so important. So pray more, sin less, love more. Those are the 3 tips I would have. If you're not having much success telling people about Jesus, that's where I would start. And then I would also tell you to just start. Find somebody, pray about it, and go talk to them. I mean, you don't even need to pray that it's the right thing to do. You know you should tell people about Jesus. But pray more, sin less, love more.